Yo, we step up in the scene, check your engine is clean. DPF guys got your ride smoking green. No block, no drag, just pure machine. Come show us your truck, we'll make it pristine. We just wanna know, can your diesel uphold? Bring something dirty, we'll turn it to gold. It's like this, we clean up your flow. Now your engine is gliding. It's
here. Woo! It is Sunday, March 2nd, 2025, and welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in to DPF Guys Sunday Q&A. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss any updates. If you're watching elsewhere, just keep on watching, I guess, or head over to youtube.com/DPF Guys to join us live. In this episode, we're diving deep into the real truths about diesel emissions, DEF, and DPF maintenance. I think we might bust a myth or two, like whether DEF is really cow piss, and expose why platinum DEF is just a gimmick. We'll also cover the best ways to extend your DPF life, common fault codes like SPN 4364 FMI 17, and other greatest hits, and how to spot cracked DPF filters. We'll discuss why frequent regens mean your DPF might just be dirty, the real cost of replacing the OneBox in 2015 Freightliner, and why tampering with emissions can cost fleets millions in fines. Plus, we'll take a look at the new on-truck DPF cleaning machines that people have asked me about and whether they actually work. So if you run a Detroit, Volvo, or any modern diesel, you don't want to miss this episode. We're cutting through the BS and giving you the facts to keep your truck running strong. Hang on a second here. All right, so we got 10 questions here. Hang on a second. Question number 1. Do you recommend any DEF fluid additives at all? Thanks. So DEF, or diesel exhaust fluid in the US, or AdBlue, if you happen to be in other parts of the world, is a liquid that is injected in the after treatment system after the particulate matter, or soot, and ash is removed from the exhaust system by the DPF, or the diesel particulate filter. The purpose of DEF, along with the SCR, or selective catalytic reducer, is to reduce the amount of NOx, and NOx stands for nitrogen oxides, which include nitric oxide, not nitrous oxide like they give you at the dentist, but nitric oxide, and nitrogen dioxide, or NO2. And the whole DEF and SCR system will reduce the amount of NOx put in the atmosphere by 80% or even more. What happens is the DEF sprays in, is mixed with the exhaust in the decomposition chamber, or the mixing chamber. It's basically the part of your truck's exhaust where the DEF sprays in, the heat burns off the water, and then it's just the urea, just the nitrogen and ammonia that go forward into the system. And it's then processed by the catalytic materials inside the SCR, which turns the NOx into ammonia for just a split second. And then the ammonia itself is converted into harmless nitrogen, which makes up, believe it or not, 78% of the air we breathe, and water vapor. The DEF is formulated very precisely with 32.5% urea and 67.5% distilled and deionized water, which basically is pure water with the minerals taken out and nothing else. Adding anything to your DEF will, at best, have zero effect at all, or at worst, cause more problems than you had originally. For example, even platinum DEF is nothing more than a drop or two of dish soap, kind of, in a 2.5 gallon jug of DEF, which does nothing other than to slightly reduce the crystallization of DEF that might be spilled outside of your truck, but does nothing at all to the DEF once it's in the system. And in the system and experiencing the heat from the exhaust system. So no, I don't recommend DEF fluid additives. I mean, you can use them if you feel they work, but you're basically just wasting money and potentially causing issues that you wouldn't need to cause otherwise. What do I recommend? I recommend using the freshest DEF possible at the very lowest price. buy it by the jug, get it from Walmart, get it from Tractor and Supply. Just make sure that it's fresh. And if it's jugs of DEF being sold someplace where people who drive diesel trucks frequent, it's probably going to turn over a lot. Just make sure that when you buy a box of DEF anywhere, it's not dusty. Not because the dust affects anything, it just means it's been laying around for a long time. And DEF does have a shelf life of about 2 years under ideal conditions. So if it's indoors at, in the 70-degree range, it'll last 2 years. But the minute that the DEF is in the heat, and especially if it's in the heat and is open in any way where the air gets at it, that DEF will last maybe a year at best. So fresh DEF, cheap DEF, and no, don't add anything to it because it's not going to help you. All right, question number 2. What are the best ways to improve DPF efficiency and extend the DPF life without frequent cleaning? My kind of one and only answer is use Clean Air Fleet diesel additive or something similar. When you use a good additive like Clean Air Fleet, which happens to be spinning over my left shoulder here, sold by the gallon, sold by the case, sold by 300-gallon containers and 55-gallon drums if you do want to get it in quantity. It's going to help you burn fuel more completely. And if you burn the fuel more completely and more efficiently, guess what? You reduce soot buildup in the DPF. Also, keep your fuel system clean, improving combustion and lowering your emissions. Lower emissions means, just less DPF cleaning and less DEF usage. Also, you want to perform regular valve adjustments on basically any engine. Make sure you follow the valve adjustment schedule. On Detroit engines, to me, I've noticed it's even more important. On the Detroit, you're going to want to get your first valve adjustment at 100,000 miles. And then I would recommend getting your second valve adjustment at somewhere between 500,000 and 600,000 miles. The recommended interval is the first overhead valve adjustments at 100,000 and then 500,000 miles after that. But I found that on the Detroits, at least, if you wait till 600,000, it's generally a little bit too late and you run the risk of cracking your DPFs. So I would definitely get your second valve adjustment done somewhere between after 500,000 and before 600,000. Don't push it much past 6. So if you get your valve adjustment, it prevents low compression. Low compression leads to unburned fuel and excessive heat downstream that can crack your DPF filters. Also, what else can you do? Real simple stuff. Check for exhaust leaks. Even small leaks before the DPF can alter sensor readings and cause unnecessary regens. And it can also cause heat to escape during a passive or active regen which will stop a regen from being complete and effective. So even small leaks before the DPF can cause problems. So inspect your flex pipes, clamps, flanges for leaks. Listen, look for soot. It could be something where just a clamp came loose and you just need to torque it down and solve that problem. Use high quality fresh diesel and DEF. Always use fresh, high quality DEF. Avoid expired or contaminated DEF fluid. Platinum DEF doesn't add any real benefit. Don't waste your money. Run the Clean Air Fleet fuel additive to improve combustion efficiency. Maintain your air and fuel filters. Dirty air filters increase soot production by restricting airflow, and clogged fuel filters can cause incomplete combustion, leading to more soot in the DPF, more regens, more cleanings, etc. Use high quality oil. Keep your oil changes on schedule. And because a lower quality oil will actually burn more, and when oil burns, it will produce there are metals in the oil, lubricating metals in the oil, nanoparticles of metal. Those will burn and produce ash in the DPF. So stay on top of your maintenance, very important. Avoid bad fuel and DEF, and your DPF will last longer, regen less, and run more efficiently. So I mean, that's take care of your truck and it will take care of you. What do we have for question number 3? Number 3, code SBN 5018 FMI 18. I've been getting this code for 1.5 years off and on. I took it to Volvo. They updated the hardware. Hardware, software. It keeps coming back. I don't know what to do. Oxidation catalyst. What do you think? So the Volvo and Mack emission systems are pretty much bomb-proof. And yes, Volvo and Mack are the exact same when it comes to their emission system. The only issue on the Volvo and Mack is the Delta P or pressure differential sensor is a little wimpy. So I do recommend replacing that with every service. Up until recently, the pressure differential sensor, which is about like this, as big as a box of matches, is kind of small, had they have 2 tubes in it. Basically, one measures the pressure on the inlet side of the DPF, and the second tube measures the pressure on the outlet side of the DPF, so it can measure the differential pressure between that and detect when your DPF is getting plugged up, and then request a regen, passive or active. The original ones, one of the tubes was fairly stout, and the other tube was pretty thin. And what would happen is over time, the plastic would get brittle, and the thin tube would sometimes develop cracks in it. But the part is less than $200, so it's not a big deal to replace every 500,000 miles or so. So I recommend replacing that. We stock those, and just kind of as part of our procedure when we clean a Volvo is replacing that sensor. So the Volvo and Mack emission systems can take a licking and keep on ticking. Remember that from the Timex commercials back when rocks were soft when I was a kid? But the thing is with the Volvo and Mack, when the emission system stop ticking, it stops all at once. Because what'll happen is it will just kind of lull you into false sense of security. This thing will go for 500,000 miles, 600,000 miles, 700,000 miles, 792,000 miles, and all of a sudden regens, one after another, they stop working, et cetera, et cetera. So, like I said, it can take a licking and stop and keep on ticking, but when it does stop, it stops all at once. And whoopsie, going through my teleprompter here. Your symptoms will usually be the truck has gone 700,000 or more miles before you notice that it's calling for regens, but eventually those regens suddenly stop working, and they'll stop working kind of abruptly. And usually there's nothing wrong with your filter. It's just full to the top with ash. I mean, like literally full with a couple of pounds of ash. In your case, the person who asked the question, you probably just have, because you're asking about your SCR catalyst. This is also very common with a high mileage Mack or Volvo, with not the newest ones, but the, like the 15, 16, 17s. They have an SCR box or oven, or whatever the kids are calling the SCR on a Volvo or Mack these days. And it will build up DEF residue inside that box over time. So what you do is get your DOC and DPF cleaned and have your SCR cleaned at the same time. And you pull that box off the truck. It's really easy to get off. Volvo has been really thoughtful about service, making it easy on the emission side of their trucks. We take that box off. It's pretty big, weighs a couple hundred pounds, and we clean it. Cost for cleaning an SCR and a Volvo and Mack, not too bad, $325. It can be done in one day, so we can get the SCR cleaned at the same time that we get the DPF and DOC cleaned. And assuming that everything is still good up in the engine, the turbo, and everything else, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to go another 400,000, 500,000 or more miles on that cleaned SCR. So yes, SCR or selective catalytic reducer is likely the problem that that's causing your issue, and the solution is to call us at 404-999-1361, 404-999-1361. You can even call us right now. We've got Lynn Diesel is standing by to take your call. Let us have it overnight and get it working like new. And what do we have for question number 4? This was a good one. I got to ask this. Do you know about the new machine that cleans the DPF system Redneck Repairs out of Texas has tried it. And the answer to that is yes. I saw the video and it looks like they combined a forced regen with a variety of chemicals pumped into the DPF system through one of the sensor ports to clean it while it's still on the truck. And I want to be deeply respectful to anybody else in the industry trying to, better serve you by cleaning the emission systems. So I want to be respectful for what they're doing, but I also explain why we don't use a similar method and why we find that there's no other way that works better than removing the filter from the truck and cleaning it completely and doing it without chemicals. And while a simple forced regen will definitely burn the soot off the surface of the DPF, nothing can make the ash that remains and that is built up in the DPF magically disappear. And the DPF needs to be cleaned out or replaced. And the chemicals they were using, they may call it a degreaser or surfactant or an emulsifier, but in the end, it's just soap. That's all a degreaser is soap. Now it might be really strong soap or whatever it is, but it's soap. So soap works great on grease and oil, both organic and inorganic, but ash and carbon buildup is not grease. So soaps simply won't touch it. And I have recleaned a number, personally, I've recleaned a number of filters that originally cleaned with chemicals and found that while the chemical cleaning may give immediate results, like you see in the Redneck Repair video, the results are only temporary and the chemicals have a tendency to kind of gum things up and cause even more buildup and will plug your system up worse than it ever was before in a relatively short period of time. That's been my experience. Now their mileage may vary, and if they're doing it successfully and have happy customers, more power to you. But also, as a side note, introducing liquids and soaps into the emission system while it's on the truck risks damaging sensors, such as the NOx sensors. The temp sensors won't be bothered. They're pretty dumb. I don't really mind getting wet, but you want to be careful about pumping liquid into your emission system because of that reason as well. So, the nutshell is if it works for the guys in the video, that's great, but I personally would not use the method that they are recommending for cleaning. But hey, to each their own, right? Okay, here's a good one. As it kind of came out of left field. How does the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, or DERA, influence the decision to retrofit or replace older diesel engines in commercial fleets? Okay, so the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, or DERA, was created to help reduce emissions from older diesel engines by offering funding for retrofitting, repowering, or replacing them with cleaner alternatives. DERA really impacted like fire departments and schools and things like that could get the grant money to put these emission systems in. So DERA was first introduced almost 20 years ago in 2005. Retrofitting was a common solution because it was cheaper than replacing the entire truck. Well, that's true. So fleets could install diesel particulate filters or DPFs and other emissions components onto older engines to meet emission standards. But again, in my kind of practical Wisconsin farm boy opinion, retrofitting was never really the ideal solution because those older engines were never designed to run with aftertreatment systems. So what was the result? As expected, you're going to see performance issues, excessive maintenance, frequent breakdowns, basically just a mechanical mess that some people still remember to this day, and they think that modern emissions trucks kind of behave the same way. Excuse me. Over time, it became clear that newer trucks designed with emission systems from the ground up perform far better than retrofitted trucks, like no kidding. So today, DERA funding still exists. So if you want to retrofit a truck, you can still go to the government with your hand out and maybe get some funding to retrofit your vehicles. But it has become rare. Retrofitting has become rare. Most fleets choose to replace older trucks instead, especially since modern diesel engines are built to be both clean and efficient and powerful and everything else. So the industry has moved on. Most older pre-emission trucks are aging out of service, and fleets see better ROI in buying a newer truck rather than struggling to keep a retrofitted truck on the road. What's the bottom line? Retrofitting was a short-term and maybe not the best idea as a fix, but replacing with modern emissions compliant trucks is ultimately the smarter long-term solution. Okay, let's check to see if we have any questions coming in here. Oh, we do. Sweet. Okay. Hey, Brian Bond, Jacob Humphreys, and Kajaba Roma. Tell you what, I hope you're still watching, because I'm gonna answer your questions right now. Brian Bond said he's alive. Good to know that you're not dead. Brian is a character, and always enjoy talking to him. Jacob, welcome aboard, Mr. Humphreys. So glad you're here. Jacob asked a really good question here, which is, what seems to be the least reliable one-box configuration you've seen? Now, I'm assuming you're talking about the one-box on the Freightliner. You know, initially I was a little suspicious of the one-box because it seemed overly complicated, but I've gotten comfortable with it, and they're actually pretty solid. I would say that, when it comes to configurations that would be potentially less reliable, the pneumatic dosing system can be a little problematic. But again, that's going to be on a 2012 unit, and that thing's 13, 14, 15 years old now. It's actually, it's a pretty reliable system, as long as what you're looking for and how to maintain it. But if you're comparing it to the one-box solution on the newer Volvos and Macks, the emission system on the Volvos and Macks are the most reliable system I've seen out there. So Freightliner, pretty good. Scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it a solid 8.5, 9. And the emission system on a Volvo or a Mack, I would give an 11. All right, we got another one here. Thanks so much for your question, by the way. This is awesome and super exciting that I'm getting some questions from YouTube. I finally feel like I'm human. I have a 2018 Freightliner Cascadia with 474,000 miles on it. No issues with the truck. When should I clean the DPF? You're going to be, the manufacturer's recommended interval on that is 400,000 miles. If you don't have any issues, I would say that you should probably plan on getting it done, fairly soon. I mean, I would probably, if you're happy at 474, I would probably be, I'd be thinking about getting it done, now 500,000, 525. I wouldn't go much beyond that. But most importantly, the most important thing you want to do, you've got a 2018, and that means that you have a soot sensor on it. You've got a particulate matter sensor on that thing. And if your DPFs crack, it will trigger codes from the soot sensor. You will have to replace your DPFs. How to prevent your DPFs from cracking, you may ask, right? You're going to ask me that? I hope so. You're going to want to get, in the next, somewhere between 500,000 and before 600,000 miles, get your overhead valve adjustment done. And I can't stress that strongly enough. Get that done. Because what will happen if you don't, it will cause combustion. It'll cause incomplete combustion in one or more of the cylinders, and that will cause high soot levels, which will plug up your DPF. But more importantly, the incomplete combustion will allow unburned fuel to get downstream into your one box, and it will crack your DPFs almost certainly after 10, 15, 20,000 miles, which means you have the added expense of DPFs, and possibly getting derated because of the soot sensor. If you let it go too long, the soot will get into your SCR and will poison your SCR, requiring more work. So I would say, get that one box cleaned at 500,000 miles or so. But more importantly, definitely before you hit 600,000 miles, somewhere between 500,000 and 600,000 miles, get an overhead valve adjustment done, and then get your one box clean. And there's no reason you shouldn't be able to roll another 500,000 miles before you have to think about it again. As an aside, unrelated to emissions, another thing you're going to want to look at before that truck hits 700,000 miles is there is an uptake oil manifold, like a straw, that's sucking the oil out of your oil pan up into the engine. It's made out of plastic. It gets brittle and can break. And of course, starving your engine of oil, and that's never good. So what I normally recommend is you would wait, if you, before you hit 700,000 miles, get that thing replaced. Just schedule, for your oil change, have them bring the truck in, drop the oil pan, replace that part, put the oil pan back in, put clean oil in, and then you're good for another 700,000 miles. But valve adjustment, OneBox cleaning, replace your oil uptake manifold. I don't know what the exact term for the straw, the sucker. And there's no reason that you shouldn't be good to 1 million until you hit 1 million miles before you need to do those things again. Not to say that something else might go wrong with your turbo or your water pump or something else, but from an emission standpoint, valve adjustment, OneBox cleaning, and this isn't emissions, but just remember that oil uptake manifold, it's good to get that thing replaced at about 700,000. So I hope that helps. And if anybody has any other questions, just drop them in the comments below. Even if the live is over and you're watching the recorded version of this, shoot me some questions in the comments and I will pick them up and answer them. And if you need to get a hold of me for any reason, even now, after hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we have an an AI lady. Her name is Lynn Diesel, like Vin Diesel, waiting for you to answer your questions and take your message at 404-999-1361. 404-999-1361. Call us now, talk to Lynn, and we will give you a ring right back. All right, let's get on to number 6. I'm feeling good. This has been a good this has been a good show. I really appreciate it. Thank you everybody who was watching me live on TikTok and popped over here. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you are not following me on TikTok, do so, because there's always kind of fun stuff I cover. I do try to answer every question that comes in. Sometimes I get a little bit behind, so don't get frustrated. And definitely never hesitate to give us a call at 404-999-1361. And you'll talk to myself or Maria or Genesis or one of the other nice people at the company, and we will make sure that we get your question answered. Excuse me while I have a sip of soup. That's good. All right. Excuse me. Question number 6. What are common misconceptions about diesel exhaust fluid, DEF usage, and how can proper management improve engine longevity? DEF and engine longevity are probably kind of unrelated. But here, what are some common DEF misconceptions? What are common myths that I can bust? One myth is DEF is made from cow piss. No, that is a myth. Well, urea is definitely found in urine from any animal, cows, people, cats, chinchillas. The urea used in DEF is synthetically produced and highly purified. DEF is only 2 ingredients, 32.5% urea and 67.5% distilled and deionized water, basically pure water with no minerals in it. So that's, it's not cow pee. It is synthetically manufactured. Many of the DEF plants are near oil refineries because they'll take some of the waste chemicals from, like the ammonia that's left over from a refining process and then use that to make the DEF. Another myth is platinum DEF is better. No, it's not. It's just a marketing gimmick. It doesn't improve performance or efficiency. It just costs you more money. Another myth, DEF is a major expense. Not really. DEF consumption is about 2 gallons per 100 gallons of diesel, adding roughly about a penny per mile in cost for the actual DEF itself. Now, again, that'll vary depending upon the cost of the DEF, but about a penny a mile. Another myth, cheap DEF will damage my truck. It's true that poor quality or expired DEF can damage, can cause impurities that clog injectors and damage the SCR. But if you use fresh ISO 22241 certified DEF, and you'll be fine. Just important that your DEF is fresh. I always say, make sure if you buy it by the box, that the boxes aren't dusty, because if they're dusty, that means that they're probably turning over slow, and you might want to go someplace that has a better turnover on their def. Another myth: ammonia smell from the exhaust is normal. No, it's not. If you smell ammonia, it's going to mean that your SCR system is not functioning properly. Get it checked. So keep your DEF fresh. Using high quality diesel fuel reduces the risk of after treatment failures. Running the clean air fleet right behind me, diesel fuel additive improves fuel combustion efficiency, reduces soot buildup tremendously in your DPF system, and because your fuel is burning more efficiently, it is not producing as much NOx, so it lowers your DEF consumption, believe it or not. Avoid expired DEF, prevents clogging injectors, DEF injectors, SCR failures, and that can save you thousands in repair. Manage your DEF properly. Use clean air fleet. Keep your emission system clean. Your truck will thank you with fewer breakdowns and lower maintenance costs. Number 7. A quick check over here. Oh, here's a okay. We got, before I go to 7, let's take a look at this comment from Scott Gooding from LinkedIn. I'm actually live on LinkedIn. Scott, thank you so much for your comment, man. I really appreciate it. And your profile picture is looking good. All right. And Scott says we should convert all 18-wheelers to use CNG. It's a cleaner energy. We have plenty of technologies already in place. It'll be costly to change all the gas stations, but it'll be worth it in the long run. Lower fuel price, lower. So there is a lot of CNG out there. There are Waste Management uses CNG, and a lot of their trash collection vehicles. A lot of buses use CNG. There's even the latest Princess cruise ship is powered 100% by CNG. So there's a lot out there running CNG. And you're right, it would be from an emission standpoint, it would be much cleaner. I think the main thing is just the logistics, just like you said. I mean, it would take a lot to convert all of these diesel fuel stations to CNG, and it takes longer to fuel the truck than it does with diesel. CNG is not inherently unsafe, but you have to do a lot more to keep it safe because it's under a tremendous amount of pressure and everything else. So your idea of converting to CNG is not a bad one. It's just that there's a lot of moving parts, and is the juice worth the squeeze? Ideally, good diesel emissions, which we have today, and then if there was a way to lower the carbon monoxide impact, because you may not realize this, but when you burn a gallon of fossil fuel, and this is where Greta Thunberg and all those boneheads that block the highways and stuff, this is what they're all fired up about. But when you think about it, it is kind of shocking. Burn a gallon of diesel or a gallon of gasoline, kind of the same thing. Anytime you burn some hydrocarbon, a gallon of fuel will weigh about 8 pounds, just under 2 kilos, 8 pounds. And okay, when that diesel fuel flows, when it burns and the exhaust goes through a DPF and goes through an SCR, there you could literally breathe off of that tailpipe and you'd be pretty much okay. Don't try it, but I mean, it's not, the pollution that you can see and smell is out of it. A properly functioning diesel emission system will produce nothing more than nitrogen and water. But there's still CO2 left over. So what's my point? You burn a gallon of diesel fuel, you produce, which is 8 pounds. You burn 8 pounds of diesel fuel, you produce 22 pounds of CO2. That's a lot. So you burn this much diesel fuel and you produce this much CO2. And the climate activists, that's really what they're fired up about, is the CO2. So, ideally some way to mitigate that CO2, planting trees, extracting the CO2 from the atmosphere in some way. You know, if there was a way to produce diesel fuel that would pull carbon out of the air to produce the fuel, you know, then we'd have a zero-sum game. And, you know, I've heard that there are no perfect answers. There's only compromises. And so now it's just a matter of finding, you know, what's the good compromise? You know, how do we still, you know, get goods from point A to point B so that we could all eat and wear clothes and have iPhones and microphones for your podcasts and hats and glasses and every other commodity that you need to live comfortably in a modern world, and do it in a way that is sustainable. Um, you know, I don't have all the answers. In fact, I have practically no answers. And that's why smart people like you who are watching this, you know, let's work together and make sure that we keep things running as smoothly as possible and as efficiently as possible. And, you know, do the best we can for ourselves, our friends driving trucks, and the environment at the same time. So, Scott, thank you so much for your question. I really appreciate it. Let's see if anything else came in here. But, you know, CNG, there's upsides and downsides to it. And, you know, we'll see. All right. We'll see. And G. All right. Number 7. I actually got this question during the TikTok live, and hopefully the gentleman who asked me this is watching. How much would it cost to install a brand new OneBox in the 2015 Freightliner? Why do I have that answer? That answer is not, doesn't tie to, but how much will it cost? So let me just kind of wing this one. And I worked for a company in sales, and the owner of the company, my boss, you know, people would say, how much does it cost to do X? And, you know, you couldn't tell them right to the penny, but I know, you know, and I would say, well, it costs about this much. And he'd be like, no, don't tell them the cost until you build value and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to play that game. You know, I want to tell people, you know, yes, your mileage may vary, but this is what you should expect to spend. And then, you know, let them decide with your help whether it's a good investment or not. So how much would it cost to install a brand new OneBox in 2015 Freightliner? First, you're going to be getting a OneBox that'll be not just a brand new OneBox, but also brand new filters, new clamps, gaskets. So this will be complete, all of the parts. For a 2015, you're going to spend maybe $8,500 for the complete thing, 3-year warranty, unlimited mileage. Now that will be for the box, the filters, and everything. You still need to pay a mechanic to take the old OneBox off, put the new OneBox back on, hook up the computer, reset everything. And you know, that's probably going to cost you around $800-900 for that work. So now you're at, you know, $9,000 and change. We do recommend when you're replacing a OneBox to replace the harness on the OneBox because they get a little crispy and brittle, and they have a tendency to the insulation on the wires will crack if you try to use the old one on the new OneBox. Those aren't bad, $200 or so for a new new harness. So now you're at, you know, 9,200 or so, or 9,700. So now you're approaching 10 grand. And then if you got new NOx sensors in your journey trying to solve this issue, you can definitely use those again. But I do recommend that if your sensors are old, that you just replace them, especially because the temp sensors are fairly cheap. I mean, you know, 50, $60 a piece. And the labor you spend trying to get one out can easily exceed the cost of the new sensor. So put new sensors in. There's a couple of stainless steel pressure tubes that are easier to replace than to take out and move, because generally you take them out, you rip threads and they don't really go back in the hole properly. And there's a couple of short silicone pressure tubes. So, you know, if you replaced all of your sensors and your harness and the OneBox and the mechanic all in, 11 grand probably. or maybe a bit less, but right in that $11,000 range. And I realize that is not pocket change necessarily, but realistically, if you were to get that done at the dealership, it wouldn't surprise me if it cost you every bit of $20,000 to do the same thing. So the OneBox itself around $8,000 for a 2015 Freightliner. But mechanic labor, and depending upon how many sensors you want to put in that thing, um, you're going to be somewhere in the just a hair under 10 or just a hair around 11, maybe a little less, a little more. And that's it. And regardless of what my boss thought about telling people the truth about pricing, well, screw it. That's why I'm not working for him anymore. I'm now doing my own thing, being a DPF guy. So if any of you out there have a 2015 Freightliner or a 2017 or an 18 or a 14 or 12, and you want to ask me the same question about how much would it cost to install a OneBox in your 2015 or 16 or 12 or 11 or 19 Freightliner, give me a call at 404-999-1361. Call me at 404-999-1361. I'll give you a second to screenshot that. And then you could call right now and you're going to talk to Lynn Diesel, our AI receptionist, or leave us a voicemail and we will get back to you in the morning. So there's your answer on that one. And my old boss, if you're watching, well, I think you're wrong. I think when people ask about pricing, just tell them, and then we can decide where to go from there. Number 8's a good one. Okay. What are the potential legal and financial consequences of non-compliance with diesel emissions regulations for fleet operators? So non-compliance with diesel emissions regulations can lead to significant legal and financial repercussions for fleet operators. Recent cases have highlighted the severity of these consequences. The diesel and fleet in Alaska, they weren't fined too much, $65,000 for doing a delete. There was a delete company in North Carolina just back in September of last year, 2024. They were fined $10 million for doing deletes. Capuro Trucking, they got fined about $220,000 for deleting a few trucks in their fleet. So there's some definite financial penalties for doing deletes. So the other thing is, maintenance and updates are tricky once you've tampered with your emission system. So once your emission system is deleted and tuned, performing maintenance or installing official updates becomes difficult or impossible. And trucks, like many things in our lives, are controlled more and more by software. And just like your laptop or your phone, or your, God knows what, your refrigerator, sometimes a software update is necessary to make it work right. And if your truck has been deleted and tuned and all the parameters are now manipulated with an upload that has nothing to do with what is actually from the factory, guess what? You can't do those updates anymore. And if you do, it'll overwrite your delete, and now you're basically on the side of the road. Also, dealerships might just say, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to work on a deleted truck. Many dealers are held to, they are held responsible if they service a deleted truck. So fewer and fewer people are working on deleted trucks. Even some of the independent mechanics I work with will just refuse to take in a customer with a deleted truck. There's some resale and trade-in restrictions. Deleted trucks technically cannot be legally sold or traded in at dealerships. They technically can't be sold to private parties either, though no one's going to really check. So many dealers will not accept a deleted vehicle due to their non-compliant status, limiting the resale options for fleet operators. In summary, adhering to diesel emissions regulations is crucial for fleet operators to avoid substantial fines, maintain operational flexibility, and preserve vehicle value. And then I also heard, though I don't know if this is just rumor, that they're going to potentially start looking for emissions violations in the level 1 DOT inspections coming up. So just you know, if you're thinking about deleting your truck, just understand that there can be consequences that you might not even have thought of yet. So, you know, that's do you, you know, do what you're going to do, but understand that there can sometimes be consequences, and those consequences can be a pain in the butt. All right. Number 9. Um, another code. I love these codes. Have you ever dealt with SPN 4364 FMI 17? No, but if you hum a few bars, I can pick it up on my guitar. Let's see, FMI 17, SCR NOx efficiency, low detection by moving average on a new generation Cascadia DD15. Have not found any DEF issues whatsoever. Okay, this sounds suspiciously like a bad NOx sensor or possibly a harness and wiring issue. If you're in the area, one thing we can do for you that was kind of unique is we can swap in a brand new NOx sensor to test if that solves the issue. If it does not solve the issue, we'll pull it out, put the old one in. You have to pay for it. Another thing you want to do, this is just always just good practice if you have any emissions issue, is check your tailpipe for soot or your stack. If you see soot buildup, your DPF is cracked and allowing raw exhaust to reach the SCR, which can poison the catalyst and cause efficiency issues. Another thing could be, I talked about software updates earlier. ECM or ACM software may be outdated. Some trucks need a software update to correct miscalculations in NOx efficiency readings. That all said, I'd still lean towards simply a failing NOx sensor. These sensors can wear out over time. They're kind of like a light bulb where they will, you know, they're like little heating elements in them and things like that. I've heard that a typical lifespan of a NOx sensor is 200 to 250,000 miles before they can become less reliable or fail. So what I would do is swap in a new NOx sensor to rule it out. Come to us, we'll swap one in for free and see if that fixes it. If it does, you pay us. If not, you don't pay us for the NOx sensor. You might have to pay the mechanic to put it in. Inspect your tailpipe for soot. A cracked DPF could be the real culprit. Check for software updates on your ACM and ECM. Now, your ACM is your after treatment control module. Your ECM is your engine control module. They both work in harmony to do all of this. Inspect for wiring damage. Something might be rubbing up against something, corroded, damage, shorten out. Bottom line, if your DEF system checks out, it's likely a bad NOx sensor, cracked DPF, or just outdated software, some combination of all of the above. So let's get it diagnosed the right way. Give us a call, 404-999-1361. Give us a call, 404-999-1361. If you're watching this live and call us, make sure you tell Lynn Diesel that, hey, I was watching the live and I'm calling to get some help. Let's jump over and see if anything else came in here. Okay, so we are good. I think I've got caught up on the questions that have come in from elsewhere. Thank you so much, everybody who's asked a question on YouTube or on LinkedIn or Facebook, wherever you might be. Last, but definitely not least, is question number 10. What are the best practices for diagnosing and addressing common diesel emissions system faults to prevent costly repairs? Well, such as frequent regens. If you're suddenly having to do more frequent regens, your DPF may just be dirty. In fact, it probably is. If it's been more than 200,000 miles since your last DPF cleaning, start there. Detroit engines and DPF efficiency codes. If your Detroit engine has over 500,000 miles and you're getting DPF efficiency codes, it's almost certain that you have cracked DPF filters. Look at your tailpipe, check, or your stacks, check them for soot. You should never see soot if your filters are not cracked. Get valve adjustments done to prevent low compression. I talked about that earlier. A Detroit engine needs an overhead valve adjustment at the first one at 100,000 miles, then every 500,000 miles, then at 500,000 miles, and every 500,000 miles after that. If your valves are not adjusted, you'll develop low compression, leading to power loss as well as poor fuel economy. Also, unburned fuel in the exhaust stream due to low compression, creating excessive heat downstream, which will damage your DPF due to thermal shock, leading to cracks. And then maintaining your fuel and exhaust system. Use a high-quality diesel additive like Clean Air Fleet to ensure a clean burn and reduce soot buildup, listen and look for exhaust leaks. They can skew sensor readings and cause false emission faults. And also, any sort of exhaust leak will reduce the effectiveness of a regen, and because the heat is escaping before it can get to where it wants to go. So a small exhaust leak can cause big problems. Use fresh, high-quality DEF, but don't waste money on platinum DEF or any sort of DEF additives. It doesn't provide any real benefit. Keep your air filters clean. Use good quality oil to maintain proper combustion efficiency. Your fuel filter, make sure that stays clean. Stay on top of maintenance. Use good fuel and good DEF, and don't ignore early warning signs. A little preventative care can save you from expensive repairs and unexpected downtime. So, all right, folks, I've talked a few times about the additive. If you want to get 10% off on Clean Air Fleet on your first order of 4 gallons, a case of 4 gallons, just text the word additive to 404-999-1361. But I would actually say, don't text us right now, because our texting system seems to be not working as it should right now. We're waiting for some approvals to come through. So call us at 404-999-1361, 404-999-1361. Call us 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And if no human being is there, our artificially intelligent AI receptionist, her name is Lynn Diesel, she will answer your call. So we covered a lot today, from DEF myths to costly emissions mistakes and the best ways to keep your DPF running clean. So what did we learn? Run Clean Air Fleet, diesel fuel additive, keep your DEF fresh, and don't fall for gimmicks like platinum DEF. If you're dealing with frequent regens, cracked DPFs, or weird fault codes, check the basics. Look for exhaust leaks, NOx sensors, your valve adjustment, and any software updates. If you're thinking about tampering with your emissions, just look at the $1 million fines. It may be worth it to you. I just don't think it's worth it. I don't have that kind of money, and I really don't want to be in federal prison that badly. At the end of the day, smart maintenance saves you money. Keep up with regular DPF cleaning, use high-quality fuel, and watch for early signs of trouble. If you have any questions at all, anytime, day or night, give us a call at DPF Guys, 404-999-1361. Give us a call at 404-999-1361. Screenshot this baby, and we'll help you get back on the road without the headaches. So, getting ready here, I will say, see you next time. Like, follow, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us a big thumbs up. Leave your comments down below, up above, over on the side, and we will answer them as we see them. Stay safe. Keep those trucks rolling.
Haze, just clear skies ahead with DPF Guys. Your exhaust game's on tread. We got the tools, the skills, the might to get your truck rolling clean into the night. Throttle up, feel that clean airflow. Our service so slick, your ride seals the show. DPF Guys, we got the fit so fine. Hit the road with confidence. Now the world's your shrine, bringing that rig.